All right. So this is the kind of thing that this is the kind of knife that just kind of gets me scratching my head. And for good reason, all right? I'm a knife guy. I absolutely love knives. I love knives. Unfortunately, this is not mine. A buddy of mine, I guess my channel kind of got him back into collecting knives, and that was one thing that he said that he loved doing so much. And this guy has a huge collection, far bigger than mine. And he recently got this. I think the guy's a little bit crazy, but well, I think a lot of military dudes are a little bit off their rocker. No offense, just they sound a little bit, you know, like I'm not trying to be disrespectful or anything, but the guy is already kind of mental, and I thought I had mental issues. So let's get into it, everybody. Let's talk blades. That's what we're into today. I have for you guys this. This is the Paragon, Asheville Steel Paragon. The model name is the Warlock. What is there to say about this thing? That let me just here, so you guys can understand. Yes, he kept the box and everything. He wanted me to feature it on my channel, so I did him a solid and said, yeah, sure, whatever. I'll do that because I think this is an interesting knife. I hate this knife, or I love this knife. I love to hate to love this knife. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, opening this thing it takes a bit of muscle. All right. Now, if I were to hand this to you and you know nothing about knives, or maybe you know just the bare minimum because you already know how a particular knife works. You hit the thumb stud, you pop it open. Or maybe it's a slip joint. You pinch the blade and the handle and you click it open. Or maybe, if for whatever reason you have a switchblade, you know how to open it with the button. This is a different knife. Entirely. It's big, it's heavy, it's a bit on the awkward side, and all of these reasons are for the design of this knife, actually. And I gotta say, it's quite attractive. It is very attractive. But it is a knife that takes a little getting used to. Like I said, I digress. Back to me handing this to you. I wouldn't know if when he handed this to me, I honestly didn't know how to open it. I had to kind of look up a few things about this in order to get just a little bit familiarized with it. And if I were to hand this to you, somebody who probably doesn't know too much about this in particular, regardless of what you think you know, you probably would have the same funny thought of scratching your head in the same way. So I'm just going to go ahead and open it up. All right. I tried my best to keep that in frame. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and close it, and I'm going to do this slowly so you guys can see it. Sorry, it's gonna come out of frame here. Okay. Like I said, I tried doing that just a little bit slower so you guys see how that works. No, this is not a switchblade. So if I were to show you, okay, here it is. You see the handle, right? And you're probably scratching your head too and thinking, there's got to be a way to open this thing. Yeah, it is. There is. And of course, your first initial reaction would be to hold it this way and press this button, right? Well, nothing's opening. What if I press this one? There's one on the other side. No? So, trying to open it like this just doesn't work. I mean, you see it, but then you're like, wait a minute. You put two and two together, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to open this bad boy up. What it does is you have to put a finger on this side and a finger on this side. So your forefinger and your thumb. Once you press these two together, this opens up. Once it opens up, You use a flick of a wrist in order to get it open. And once you let go that pinch grip and you practice a little bit, the better you get at it, it pops open and you have the blade. Paragon Warlock. This one had my head in for a loop. Now, the reason why I hate this knife. Why do I hate this knife? I hate it because it takes a decent amount of muscle to get this thing open. Now, it could be because that, the blade's got that coating on here. It could be because of the fact that it could be just a new knife, and sometimes new knives take a little bit to work in. You got to work it in a little bit in order to get it to, whatever. So when my buddy handed it to me and he was like, "Hey man, check this out." And I was like, "All right." I pop it open and I close it and he's laughing, and a couple of his other, military friends are sitting there laughing at me, and they're kind of just looking at me like, "Hey, you figured it out?" And I was like, "Yeah, it took a little bit." And they're like, "Yeah, I got us scratching our heads too." And we got into it and started talking about it. And then he's like, "So do you like it?" And I'm like, "To be honest with you, I really don't know how to feel about it. I'm kind of biased on it. I really don't know if I should like something like this, because if it doesn't have like a really fast opening. You kind of have to get used to opening it. And then you got to get used to closing it. Because if you don't close it right away or properly, it'll actually stay open a little bit. But this mechanism is quite interesting. Because I'm pushing the two together and it's separating. Once that happens, assuming that you do it right, you get the blade out. And you close it. So it's a really interesting knife. So I'm really happy to bring this to my channel, because when he brought it to my attention, I was like, wow, I need to borrow this, put it on my channel, because this is really interesting. And he was like, yeah, man. But, like I said, he told me to go ahead, and he was like, I want you to put it on your channel, and I want you to feature this. And I was like, yeah, all right. So I don't know. This is a head scratcher for sure. A really interesting knife. We'll go into the details of this thing. As far as I know, he purchased this knife for, I think he told me like $230, $225, something like that. It's not a light knife. 6.51 ounces. You see it right there. This is an ounce and a half over what I would carry. As far as my limit, I'd carry anything that's nowhere past 5 ounces. But this is a very interesting knife. It really is. Now I'm going to get into some... Oh my gosh, I almost cut my hand. I'm going to get into some details on this knife that I would consider why I wouldn't have this knife and why I would have this knife. So that way you guys have an idea of whether or not it's for you, and why I probably wouldn't suggest it for people who are knife collectors. But then again, if you're a knife collector and you're into this sort of thing, I guess it's one thing to have that you would like. So you got a 4-inch blade with an overall 9 3/8. When it's closed in your pocket, you are looking at a 5 3/8 handle. The thing about this knife, see, it's going to take a little bit to use. He knows how to do it better than I do. He can get it to open and closed at a dime, and here I am struggling with it, using all my muscle just to freaking get this thing open and closed. It's a little weird and awkward, but I think that's one of the reasons why I think it's But hey, you know what? I'm used to traditional knives. This is not a traditional knife by any means. So, how thick is this thing? You're looking at a 17.6. Good Lord. And the blade... The blade is a 2.9. All right, so relatively thin. It's hard. I'm trying to keep this in frame so you guys can see it without hitting my tripod or hitting the mat right here and ruining. Like, I can do it when it's off camera a little bit. But the bounce back on this thing kind of sucks. It's a little bit weird. It's a little, it's a little, it's heavy. It is. It's a heavy knife. So I'm just going to go ahead and let you guys know about my personal thoughts on this. No. I'm going to tell you right now, no. This is not a knife that I would recommend to anybody if they are beginning knife collectors or if there's somebody who's looking on a reliable knife. This is not for that. The only thing that is really good about this knife, in my opinion, is the mechanics behind this and the idea. It's fantastic once you get the hang of it. If you get the hang of it. Another thing is, you know, once it's closed, you have aluminum. This is aluminum right here. I think it's 60 T60, 61 aluminum, something like that. Something like that. I'm sure someone's going to correct me in the comments, which is fine. This isn't my knife anyway. The blade sits, it's housed in here. So, okay, you see the blade in there. Now, when I was fiddling with this, and we were outside talking, and he was showing me this thing, I told him, is there any way that the blade is being protected in there? And he goes, what do you mean? And I say, well, because this is a metal handle. So you got that clam open and shut kind of look to it and kind of functionality. Is there any padding on the inside preventing the blade from rubbing up against this material? And he kind of looked at me and he goes, now that you say it, no. And I was like, well, see, that's the thing. Then you're messing up the blade on the inside. And he said a couple of things that actually kind of proved a good point. Aluminum is going to be a lot softer than I believe it's S35 S35 steel. I believe it is. I'm not entirely sure what kind of steel this is. But I think he said S35. But I don't even know if he knows what the steel is. So he said that the steel is obviously going to be a lot harder than the aluminum. So it's not going to keep a razor's edge. It's going to be kind of jingling in there a little bit. So I have to do that carefully. Now you can hear it. So you can hear the blade kind of jingle in there. So as it's doing that, it's kind of shifting a little bit. It's going to be hitting the walls of this enclosure. And as it's doing that, obviously the blade is going to kind of dull a little bit. So it's not going to be hair-poppingly sharp. It'll still be a functional edge, but it's not going to be 100%. And that was one thing that, and I'm a knife guy. I really like knives. And when I saw that, that instantly popped in my head like, whoa, like this is really cool. But then I was thinking about like, okay, there's got to be something on the inside of this thing to protect the blade from hitting the inside walls. No, there's nothing. But then again, it's kept pretty snug, so it's very minimal. It's not like it's clanking around too much in there. But it's just enough to where you can hear it. It's not as audible, but it can kind of hinder the blade's potential edge, anyways, from being hair-poppingly sharp. So we'll go ahead and compare it to whatever I'm carrying in my pocket right now. That thing is freaking heavy. Where'd my knife go? Oh, here it is. All right, so, and I'm still carrying this, the CRKT Shizuka. No, Ken. Love this knife. It's very, very comfortable. See, now, here's the thing. This is more practical. You get your thumb on the stud, you flick the stud, and boom, it's open and ready to go. Right? You get your freaking hand on this. You have to pinch both of these together, and then you have to flick this thing out. Assuming that you don't fling the knife across the room if you lose grip, because the only grip that you have is by pinching these two areas of this knife. Now, mind you, once this is open, this is free floating. These two are free floating right here. If it's at all hindered in this way, the blade will not close completely. Like right now, it's not really, you see? It's already having problems. So if it were to go, okay, it's stopping right there. Yeah, it stops right there because it's not fully open. Now when it's fully open, now it can move. So because of that, it makes it this much more awkward to open and close. And in my aspect, out of playing with it so much, I want to say that I've gotten this thing open about 80% of the time. The other 20% was the fails, because the blade will bounce. As it comes out, it'll bounce here if it's still open and hasn't closed on time, and it'll bounce back here, and it'll actually pop back up from the other side. And of course, this isn't something you want to hand an inexperienced knife person, because once it stays like that, in that configuration, these two bits will want to close together, so it's keeping this from the blade going back inside of the handle. So because of that, you have the instinct, the urge to touch this side to push it down. You could do that, but you're touching a live blade, so you could risk cutting yourself. So by doing that, if you really have to, you'd pinch the sides right here and do that manually if you're too scared to even try to finish the rest. But pinch it, I just jiggle it, and it goes back in. Not a practical knife, in my opinion. There's really no practicality to this, to be honest with you. Could this be a combat knife? Well, the guy is a soldier, so sure, to him. But to a regular guy like me, not so much. If I were to see this, I'd probably say, yeah, that's really cool, but I probably wouldn't EDC something like this, because one, it's heavy. Two, the opening and closing mechanism on this is just a little bit weird. Not really for me, but I do find it really interesting. And three, the price. I mean, the price of this thing, it being over $200 is already kind of a tooth grinder, excuse me. Is this something that you don't want to be, oh, really? That much for this? I mean, there's a lot of handle play. There is. You can see that. There's handle play right there. And of course, once the knife is open, he was telling me that once you have it in a full grip, there's no blade play. There really isn't. I mean, there's a little bit, this way and this way, but there's none like this way and this way. There's none. So once you have it in a grip, it's pretty decent. You can actually use it for whatever you're going to use it for, whether it's self-defense or whatever. You got the jimping. The only grip you have is the shape, kind of like that cone shape, and it's actually a really wide, thick grip. So, and then of course you got the jimping on both sides right here, and you got a little bit of jimping down here, of course, when it's in the pocket. But that's the other thing too. You could seriously do better at, I mean, couldn't they just put this a little bit further up? You have so much space. You got that much sticking out of your pocket. Dude, that's a lot. I mean, at least to me anyways. I mean, put this, you got so much room up here. Why don't you just stick it just a little bit further? Even if it's just a tiny bit. It's, oh man, I hate the pocket clip on this thing. It's not a great pocket clip. Overall, I think it's a cool knife. It looks attractive. The opening mechanism is very, very interesting and unique. It has a fantastic appeal to it. I mean, it really does look nice. Spear point, it's got the double edge on there. That's always fantastic. But you got to get used to the opening and closing. And if you don't do it right, well, you're going to look at different ways to get this thing to close. And of course, you hearing that means that I'm already still kind of struggling with this. But it's not a bad knife. Just don't go tossing it, out of your hand to the other side of the room if you are getting too frustrated and you're like, and then eventually it leaves your hand and goes spinning through someone's window or to someone's forehead, which I actually almost did when we had the group of us. I was trying to open it and I actually almost let go of it, and it almost hit one of my friend's friends. He caught it and he started laughing and he's like, yeah, I did the same thing. He was like, dude, don't drop it. I just got it. And it was funny. Either way, the Paragon Warlock from Asheville Knives. This is a honkin' beast. Really, really happy. And I'm also kind of happy to give it back to the guy because this is irritating. But really cool to feature on my channel. Thanks to him. And thank you for the service. Like I said, it's an honor to be your friend. So, slash that like button, stab that subscribe. I know this video was kind of a long one. Be kind, be safe, please carry responsibly,
and I will see you all in the next video.